Hello, everyone, and welcome to Conversations on Sex, Addiction, and Relationships. I'm Tim Stein, and today, joined with my good friends Dan Drake, Wendy Conquest, and Jeannie Vitoni, we get to have Terry Crews joining our conversation today. Terry Crews, you might know him from back in the day doing Old Spice commercials, uh, Sergeant Jeffers on Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or one of the judges on America's Got Talent. And I'm thrilled to have him on our show. He is in his own recovery from sex addiction, talks about it openly, and we're going to have a conversation. I will say, through my role with the American Foundation for Addiction Research, I had the opportunity to talk with him a couple months ago, and it was a wonderful conversation. The first half hour was just two guys who are both in recovery, having recovery conversations, and it immediately felt just so comfortable and and all of that. I'm thrilled that we have him here. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. How about you guys?
Well, the other piece is that Terry Crews was a football player. Right? Yes, played for what teams did he play for? Chargers,
Rams, Chargers,
Rams,
others.
right? So this is a professional football player that now has come out and said, "Hey, I have this or had have I've it's in remission. I'm assuming sober, but basically I was addicted to pornography. And so that's such a strong, courageous thing to do. And I definitely want to find out more about how he feels about going public about this and how important it is for especially young men to be knowing about this. So I'm really excited to have him on today.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially in an area that's so has such a stigma with it to be so public, I think is really remarkable. So I'm really excited to hear his perspective, get his insights and just what that journey's been like for him. I think that's amazing. Such a gift to the world to have that story out there to inspire so many others that are struggling.
That's what I was thinking. I was thinking the courageous piece, really, especially for the young people in the world who might click in to listen to what he has to say because they recognize his name or his face or something. And in that way, that's really being of service to others. And so I'm excited that maybe we could help people know a little bit, learn a little bit, turn away from, or get some help kind of a thing. And
Yeah.
so how wonderful of him to share his story with us.
Yeah.
So
Well, Terry, apparently we are unanimous in appreciating your courage. You want to hop on and join us here?
All right. Hello, guys. How you
Welcome,
doing?
Terry.
Hi,
Oh, thank
Terry.
you so much. That was a great introduction. Thank you so, so much. I appreciate all the love and I'm just thankful to be here. This is awesome.
Yeah. Well, we really appreciate you being here. Appreciate your journey. Can you just share with us a little bit, like, what was your process of like self-realization that porn was addictive and problematic for you, and how did that come to light for you and sort of step you? I'm also making the assumption we have those moments of realization, and
Mm.
then there's a delayed reaction until we actually do something about it.
Yeah.
So, what was your journey like?
Wow. It's a long story, but it starts like this. My
Hmm.
wife was done. She said it's over. It was a conversation that we had. I was on the East Coast filming a project, and she was at home in Los Angeles. And what was really, it's funny because with this kind of addiction, you also are breaking boundaries in all other ways. I went out to dinner with a castmate. It was just me and her alone, and it was just weird. Like it shouldn't have happened, but my wife was questioning me, like, why would you go out to dinner, with another woman? Like, that doesn't make sense. And over the years, you get so good at rationalizing and justifying and, making all your own excuses custom made to you. And I just was like, well, I had all these excuses. And I wasn't apologetic, but it was just, you know, it was kind of to me, I had felt that even with the pornography use, that my wife and I have been getting separate, separating for a long time. It was really wild, and thing that I discovered is that every time you indulge in pornography, it was like a brick being put in my relationship. You know, um, there's a lot of spiritual connection, and she could feel me getting distant. She could feel, you know, one thing is one lie turns into another. And she just stayed on the phone and questioned me like, and it was, I mean, I have to tell you, I was trying to go to sleep. I was like, we'll talk about it later. And she's like, no, no, no. What is going, and I'll never forget the word she said is, what is it I don't know about you, Terry Crews?
Mm.
Woo. And man, and it just triggered a flood, just not even a flood. It was more like, I'm tired. I'm tired of putting up this front and tired of holding up this image, and it all weighed down. And here it is. I had a chance. Like it was a chance. It was an opportunity. It was like hitting the Death Star,
Mhm.
like Indiana Jones, and you can come underneath the wall that's closing down, and you just scoot underneath it. And I just said, I told her, I like, and what had happened is I had actually been unfaithful to her at a massage parlor 10 years earlier. But, that was the one thing that I vowed I would never tell. Like I vowed, like there's no way I'm ever gonna, and it was because of the pornography use, and it totally the acting out, and it culminated with that. And I was like, I thought I'd never do that. I thought, okay, yeah, pornography and the whole thing, that's all I got. But I thought I'm never going to touch another woman. I'm never going to have another woman touch me and all that. And there it was. I and this was 10 years earlier. And I said, oh my God, like I went across, I crossed the line, but I said, I'll never tell. So for 10 years, I had been, running around these questions about, she would say, so what goes on, what's going on with you and what's happening? And I would get into an argument in order to get out of the conversation. I knew very quickly how to just, you know, kind of blame her and give her the runaround in order to just, so she just stopped talking about it, because I knew this was a situation I didn't want it to come up, because I'd have to start another lie, you know. You ever cheated on me? No, no, no. Yeah. Oh, listen, why are you even asking me that? These ways to get around actually telling the truth, as opposed to, you know, just, but that opportunity I had, I just said, bam. When I was in Vancouver, I went to a massage parlor and I was unfaithful. And I was like, but this is the thing. It was quickly followed by, it was 10 years ago, you know. But to her, it was the second I said it,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, and I'll never forget the gasp I heard of the line, the all of a sudden my life changed, because she said, I can't deal with this. Like, I don't know you.
Mhm.
I'm how could you even do something like this? And then I went into, because she started to ask, like, what else? What else? And I said, well, I will never forget, it just poured out. I was like, I've been addicted to pornography for years. I mean, like, you know, bookstores, movie places, and then the internet. And I said, wow. And this is over years. We were married in 1989, when you kind of had to find it out. You had to kind of get I had the video places, kind of peep shows, this kind of stuff. And then, when the internet came, it was just like, oh my God, like I don't have to go anywhere.
Yeah.
Oh boy. I knew I was in trouble, you know.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that was the beginning of the new Terry Crews. I like to say that was my born day in a lot of ways. We call it D-Day in
Yeah.
our house
Mhm.
because it was when all the bombs blew up, everything. And it was shrapnel, it was blood, it was violent.
Mhm.
Um, she said, "Don't come home." And it was so like final. Like it was really strange though, because there was a relief too. Like, oh, I said it. Knowing that, and this is another thing too, you gotta understand as a Hollywood celebrity, you start to wonder, like, you know, because even in my head, I'm thinking, when is the divorce gonna come? It was almost something you expected, uh, as opposed to, you know, like, man, because you don't see anybody in Hollywood that just lasts forever. Very, very few. You just feel like, okay, this is the period. This is when it's gonna happen. Because I'd already been feeling separate. You know, um,
But also what I also hear is that when you finally were willing to acknowledge that as scary and whatever consequence might come, there's also that piece of, but now it's out here and whatever the consequences are, I can deal with it
right.
instead of just living in the fear of it. And I think it was also meaningful when you said, you know, now she could get to know me and I also make up, and now you could finally get to know yourself as well.
Wow. That is the perfect definition of that because I didn't even know who I was.
Mhm.
I got trapped in a picture of Terry Crews, and it was sustained by everything around me. I think that's the real danger of this being when you're popular and people are like, "Oh, you're the greatest." And I had a lot of sycophants that were willing to tell me how great I was and how lucky she is, and I'm actually thankful I didn't have a huge group of people around me. I was alone at the time. So I was kind of doing a film, not a film, but a TV project in New York. So there was nobody who was around me telling me like, "Oh man, you're good and you're great." I was just, it was, and it was weird. It was the same day as a blizzard. And so it was really symbolic.
Yeah.
I was trapped in the hotel. I'll never forget. It was the Mercer Hotel in Soho, and it felt like a prison, felt like a dungeon. The rooms had no decorations. I was like, oh my God, they're doing this sparse
Mhm.
modern thing, but it felt like, oh wow, this is a jail, And I couldn't leave because it was snow up to 4 feet. It was really ridiculous. It hit New York,
You were
and
going to be forced to deal with this, whether you
oh,
wanted to or not.
I was forced. I was for like, man, nothing. It was like, oh my God, it's me, myself, and I. And
Mhm.
it was a whole day of because originally she hung up on me and I had to come to the grips that I didn't have a family anymore. Like, and what did that look like? You know, wow. And it was weird because I went through several different phases. I was like, okay, good. The first phase is like, you know what? She didn't appreciate me. Cool. You know what? Hey, I'm Terry Crews. I'll just find another woman and now I'm free. And I was like, but wait a minute. Like, this is the only person on earth that knows you and actually loves you. So free to do what? And it was always followed by new questions. One question would turn into another one. And then I was like, okay, well, um, you know, I can deal with this and maybe I can get her back. But I said, she always said she'd never be with a cheater. So I knew even the vows that she made. And I was like, uh-oh, I'm out here.
So how did you
Yeah.
find?
Oh, go
So
ahead.
yeah, so I mean, so you're in the middle of that. Higher power put you there, and now it's like find your way out.
Oh, well, and I couldn't. It was like being in a hole
Yeah.
and being afraid to yell help, but the only way you can get out of the hole is if you scream and yell, help, help, somebody help me. but that would admit all kinds of weakness. I was caught in this image of, I can't appear this way. I can't, but it was done. Like I started this, I'll never forget about an hour later after that, I literally started to be like, I have to get help. I have to get help. Like I have to talk to somebody. So there was a good friend and I called him up and I told him what just happened. And he gave me probably the wisest advice I've ever received in my entire life. He said, Terry, I can't promise you you're going to get your wife and family back, but you need to get better for you. Now, you got to understand, everything in my life was always about doing good in order to get some sort of reward. You didn't do good for goodness sake. It was like, I did great with things with my wife so I could get sex, or I did great at my job so I get more money, or I could. So it was always my wife have a phrase. We always have a phrase. We call them Scooby snacks. Where just like a pet, you just doing everything in order to get that reward, but to actually get better for my own sake, like to actually really treat myself as um someone deserving of of good things, which was weird. It's kind of wild to be in that. What I mean? Go ahead.
So, Terry, question right there, because did you come to it that quickly where your good friend says, hey, you need to do this for yourself? That's the way for this. Did that make sense to you in that moment, or was that an evolution? Because for a
I,
lot of folks,
Yeah, I was gonna
they're
say that too.
like, yeah, they're like, wait, yeah, I don't know about this get thing for myself. I'm going to do it to save the family. What was it like for you?
no, that came later.
Okay.
Oh no, that came after therapy, that revelation.
Can I?
Because
Oh,
all
sorry.
I wanted was my family back at the
Right,
time.
right, right.
Yeah, I was going to follow up on that because there's something about, and if this is too personal, let me know. But it sounded like from what you said, you were open at that point. Like I think sounds like there was a part of you that said, I'm tired, whether you're aware of it or not. I'm tired of holding this. There's programs saying we're only as sick as our secrets, and it felt like it's a sickness for self, it's a sickness for the relationship. It sounds like you were honest with her. That's not the typical story. A lot of times people share partial truths, or they, drip some stuff, or they don't share it. Were you at that point open to being fully honest, or was there kind of was that a journey too?
No, it was a partial truth because I kind of gave her a big glossy like overall, but disclosure came later.
Mm-hmm.
you know, where you had to go into exactly what went down and what happened and this kind of thing. So believe me, it was a process, man. And I, but see, this is another thing too. I started to see firsthand how my behavior damaged her, you know, for the first time. It was like, oh my gosh, it was like shooting her. That's the only way I can really describe it because she was so full of love for me. And to be this person, for her to find out that I had this whole secret life, she was just like, I remember, I mean, what's wild is, even over the course of the next couple of weeks, like she was like, what you would say, someone who was in war where
Traumatized.
traumatized,
Or
like
veteran. Yeah, like
yeah, where they're
emotional
just
failure.
staring into space and she,
Shock.
she
Mhm.
couldn't function,
Yeah.
and I was like, oh my God, like,
Yeah.
it was almost like she got knocked out and just was still in a daze. And my kids were like having to do things on their own and everything because she just was in a robe for 2 weeks straight and just was like, I don't understand what is happening. And I was like, oh my God, like I
Mhm.
did this.
I want to go back to something you said about your wife, where when you told her about, but it was 10 years ago kind of a thing,
I,
that rationalization, justification, trying to minimize. But for her, it happened that second.
Yeah.
I just wrote that because I got chills when you said that. And that's the truth of that, even when something's happened in the past, when betrayed partner learns of it, it's as if it just happened because it's new information.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that it blew her into small pieces for a while.
Oh, a- and you have to understand too, I was the king of self-pity. See, that's that was a big problem of mine, which actually fed my addiction. You know, I could feel sorry for myself in so many ways. I could find I grew up poor, my father was abusive, I never got to do anything. And I mean, like the table was full of those excuses that allowed me to have pity on myself and just poor me, you know. Um, which yeah, I could even say, I didn't get enough sex, so I needed it. I had a high sex drive. My wife, we had 5 kids, so you know that wasn't the problem. You know what I mean? But you can make
Oh
it
yeah.
a problem. You know what I mean? You can always find ways to say, "Oh man, poor me,"
Mm-hmm.
and then, and let me tell you, while I was alone, and I was alone for days, it hit me. It was like, wait a minute, um, it's not anybody else. It's you. Like the thing that fueled the pity was also finding things to attack and blame and point. Um, and I said, no, 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 it's you. And I couldn't get away from that. It was like cracking an egg,
Yeah.
and the egg just you trying to put the egg back together. No, no, it couldn't be me. Couldn't be me. It's all these other reasons. I played in football and I got cut and all this the pain of that and yeah, my mother was abused but
I
that
hear
did
that.
not change me.
That
What?
that 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 piece about the fear of having to acknowledge that it's us, the addict, that we have done this, that we've put this all this chaos in our life, that we've impacted our partners and other people in our life in this way, and how terrifying it is for us to acknowledge and take on that kind of responsibility, and yet how that acknowledgement and that stepping into it's me opens up the door for us to actually finally change things, to start healing our life, to start supporting other people for our life, to start to change. And so it's that I'm terrified of this, but it's the only way out to something different.
Tim, I realized if I messed it up, only I can fix it.
Yeah.
See, but the
Powerful.
fixing, whew, I was going, oh my goodness. I mean, it was a mountain in front of me.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a valley and I was like, okay, to fix this, you got to scale Mount Everest.
I'm curious because, for people listening, um, a lot of times, especially, if there are young people listening or people that aren't in recovery yet, when did this start for you? Can you say a little bit like how it
Oh,
started and then,
yeah,
and also the piece around, like a lot of men, well, addicts in general, don't understand how this behavior can hurt their significant others.
yeah.
And they also don't understand how it can hurt other people as well, friends or colleagues, or, they just don't understand that. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh, I'll go into it. I was very, very young. I probably was about 9 or 10 years old, and I was taking music lessons, and I was learning how to play the flute from my uncle, and he was a jazz musician and the whole thing. And you might see me play the flute on AGT or something, But that's where I started. I wanted to learn from him, and but he was a real jazzy guy. He would smoke weed and he had a whole little basement that was kind of like his lair. It was his thing. And what I would do is wait down there for my mother to come pick me up. So it'd be an hour or whatever. And so I'm just going around and I open up, there's a chest full of porn. And I'm young. I don't even, and now another thing is that I was raised in a super religious household, hyper religious. It is there's a church called the Church of God in Christ, which was um, what you would call the holiness movement. Like women didn't wear makeup. Um, you were not allowed, I was not allowed to go to the movies, not allowed to go to dance, listen to secular music, all these things. It was so wild. Everything I ended up doing with my life, I was not allowed to do at that age. It was called the holiness movement. We were supposed to be separate from everyone. It was pretty much Amish, to be honest with you. I mean, and everything that was considered worldly was considered evil. So a lot of guilt about everything. If you caught dancing, if you caught, you couldn't even if you look like you enjoyed these kind of things, there would be a lot of like, hey, the Lord's watching, Jesus is watching you. And I remember wanting to be faithful, wanting to please my mother, and whereas my father was not. My father was an alcoholic. And so they would argue all the time. My mother was mad at my father, and then he would beat her and he would abuse her in front of us. One of my earliest memories is him knocking her out. So there was this huge, a very, very, it was just a lot of anxiety. I actually went to bed till I was 14 because I just didn't know. I'd wake up to glass breaking, people shouting, blood on my father's shirt. My mother stabbed him one time in retaliation, and police, and I just don't know. It's chaos. It's
Chaos.
chaos. And but let me tell you, when I opened that chest and saw that porn, it was peace. When I say peace, I it was like going into outer space. Like I was like, whoa, this is sex. This is these women. Oh my God, this is beautiful. Like, and I couldn't stop. When yeah, it's almost like a symbol, like you see in a cartoon where people's eyes start getting in little circles, and it's like hypnotized. I was hypnotized, and at a very young age. I mean, I was like, whoa, you talking about the guy? I hadn't even hit puberty yet. And no one in my household talked about sex at all. You were not allowed. To this day, I've never had a talk with my father about sex. Now, my mother would say, you know, she would say, you know, don't talk about it. We don't want to talk about it here, but, and if you try to do that, you're going to hell and this kind of stuff. So I was just always scared of it. But the more it was treated as something scary and you know and dark and distant, the more you want to see it. It was like it was like, oh my God. And man, I never forget just being lost. It was so wild that when I yelled, I remember my mother coming to pick me up, and she yelled at the top of the stairs my name, and it jerked me out of the trance. And I slammed it down. I promised I'll never look again. Like, I promised. I was like, God, forgive me, forgive me. Oh my God, I know I'm in trouble. I know I'm going to hell. I know, all those rules that just came flooding in. Like they said, hey, if you ever do this, it's going to be bad for you. And I was like, oh man. And I was really thinking also something would happen bad to my mother and my family. You start to attach anything as a kid. You don't know, if someone doesn't tell you about death, or you think you killed them, if you go to a funeral, you don't have these kind of separations. So everything that was bad that happened, I think my mother's going to get beat because I looked at porn,
Mm-hmm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Your
Uh,
9-year-old brain.
oh, right. It's
Right.
voice, 2 + 2 equals, oh my God, this is this. So but then I couldn't resist. Like every time when I would go to practice and they leave me to wait, there's that chest. And I was like, oh my goodness. And I was left alone, and I'll open it back up. And also there was an endorphin rush that just, woof, I don't know how to describe it. Um, it, I've never been high. I've never taken drugs. I've never been drunk, ever. But I know what it feels like. You
There's something you're talking about there that I know in my own addiction that I experience this, and I'm curious, Wendy, Dan, and Jeannie, if you guys see this in your clients. But what you talk about is like first seeing it, and there was like this almost instant hook. And I know for me, when it came to sexuality, there was this hook that I seemed to have that the other kids around me didn't have. And, almost like you hear alcoholics talk about that first drink and they were off to the races.
Yep.
And and something about our experiences, our genetics, the background that we've walked through, that there's this vulnerability that comes up around sexual material, sexual behavior, sexual experiences, that when you have this predisposition, it's almost like instantaneously you're hooked in.
I was hooked. At the time, again, I was born in 1968. I'm 56 years old. So at the time, there was pornography in the grocery store. You know, my mother would send me in for milk, and I would go in, and there was Playboy. It was high up on the shelf, but it was there. And this is amazing. I'll never forget this, is the hypnotizing kind of thing. I was literally caught up into this magazine, and my mother was like, "Hey," and I went, "What?" And she said, "I've been waiting out here for 20 minutes for you." And I threw the magazine down. When time stopped, is what I'm saying. Like,
Mhm.
I knew I was supposed to go get milk, and all of a sudden I was gone. Like, whoa, time and space all went away,
Mhm.
and I was just there. Like, when you say hook, and then the next kind of evolution was when my parents got cable TV.
Mhm.
And there was a channel called the Escapade Channel, which was like, it was like softcore porn and the whole thing. And but the channels were blurred and scarred. It kind of like had a scanner where they would just be blurred. But what everybody in school and everybody knew is that if you held it in between the channels, it would come in clear. Uh-oh. Man, every time we had the cable box in my mother's room, and I remember never forget, anytime they left, I was running right there. And I would watch with my hand stuck in this position till it cramped up for an hour, just because I was like, whoa. And my mother caught me doing that one time, and she was like, what? And I was, I never did this, first time I ever did that. Um,
Terry, I know a lot of people, and I just need to hear you say it. A lot of people say there's no such thing as porn addiction.
right.
You cannot get addicted. What's your answer to them?
Well, look, my answer is to anybody who is saying there's no such thing as addiction. All I know is if I'm the only man in the world to ever be addicted to it, then that I refute that whole theory, because guess what? That was me. Me. I was addicted to pornography. Addicted, meaning, listen, if day turns into night and you're still watching, I couldn't stop. To the point where, you don't eat, you know, you, and then this is a dynamic that I had that kind of, it also made me like, okay, so I did this, I feel bad about it. So I would try to make up for it, meaning, all right, be great for like a week. You know what I mean? Do everything. I'll just get your homework done, work out, be this superstar, do everything right and then what happened is the porn became a reward.
Yep.
Once you did everything great, trying to make up for pornography, all of a sudden you go, well, I did so good. Oh, this would be a great time for this. And you're talking about a cycle. And this is
Hmm.
one reason why I became very it was a weird thing because I became very driven, not because of enjoying achievements and everything, but it was also trying to clean up who I felt I was deep, deep, deep down.
Yeah.
And deep down, I felt I was a dirty, evil person.
I was
So
going to ask about that too, because that shame that can drive so, the negative core beliefs based on shame. I'm bad, I'm defective, I'm dirty, I'm, all that stuff, the stuff I'm going to hide, not show anybody. So I'm just curious because, we, not to fast forward too much, but being out there and having a certain image a certain way, it's a big departure to then hey, I'm going to be vulnerable and authentic and not show this image. I'm going to actually bring this image of what you see of me to also now here's the real me, here's all of it, including the stuff that I've hidden and been, the dirty stuff that nobody's supposed to know about, that you've actually I guess, again, not to fast forward too much, but it's really beautiful that you can be fully authentic and not have to have this image and try and do so much to try and, polish that image. You can actually be your full authentic self. It's really beautiful.
It's funny because I found for me, um, you got to say it took so much for me. I got angry. You get mad because you go, dude, like, how did I get trapped in this? And you start to realize that the power was in the secret. And it got to very, very uh basic kind of things where I said, okay, to defeat this, it can't be a secret, you know. So I started to be honest, and it was, I have to say, my wife and I went through hell. And when I say therapy and recovery and disclosure, and it's a miracle we're still together. Miracle, miracle. Betrayal trauma is real. There are times when it's, I even now I have to just be very, very careful. But also though, it made me mad that because I was hiding all this time, and I said, I'm going to counteract this so much because I had to make a decision as to whether I wanted the Hollywood life or if I wanted my family.
Wow.
And the thing is, Hollywood doesn't care if you lose your family. That's just a fact. In fact, they're like, hey, great. Now we can put you in more projects. We can, now you don't have to go home. Okay. You can stay with us all day. And you're like, but you don't love me. You don't care about me. The movies, the project, all this stuff, everybody's going to forget that stuff. Um, and I had a real, like, serious decision to make. And I decided that I wanted my family. I said, I want my family. And I said, if the Hollywood thing goes away, then so be it. And this came after years of therapy. When I came forward publicly about this, we had already been through about 8 years of therapy. And I wanted to put the nail in the coffin. You know what I mean? Like, I started asking myself, like, can I do this? Can I go public with this? And I said, if you can, it would make you could be more free. Now, I would never advise anybody to do that. Okay? Never, never, never. I would not advise people to go public. I would advise people to find a counselor such as yourselves, or find a friend or someone that you could really confide in. But I was already public. Like,
but
I'm
you're
the
talking about
public
something
eye,
that
you know?
you're talking about something that's really important though. You were 8 years into your recovery,
Yeah.
and in your work, you had gotten to the point where you were like, I hope that this goes well. And if it doesn't go well, I've got enough self strength, self-esteem, enough boundaries in place, enough of a foundation that I've created that if it doesn't go well, I can tolerate that. And so like when we talk about people that first come in the door, I'm often saying, don't go out and tell everybody, don't tell your friends, don't tell your family yet, because you don't know how they're going to respond. And if they don't respond well, you don't have the skills yet to tolerate that. At some point down the road of their recovery journey, when they're stronger, when they're more solid, when they got those boundaries in place, when they've got that recovery community around them, and if they share this with someone, that person doesn't respond well, they've got the program in place to manage that. And so what I hear from you is, yeah, you had a program in place, and going public with this was a huge decision, but you had a solid foundation and a solid program around you to tolerate however the reactions to that went.
I did. I did. And that was the beautiful part about it. Um, I decided to burn the bridge. There's another thing where, you know, you're in recovery, there is a chance you can relapse, you can go back. You can start new secrets. You know what I mean? And I wanted to make it hard for myself to start new secrets. You know what I mean? Like, in fact, burn the boat. You know, you came over on this boat, burn it. You're never going back.
I was wondering, okay, so you've made this decision to go public, and at this point, you and your wife have both done a lot of therapy, which takes a lot of time and energy, and so many more things from the relationship and family while you're focusing on this.
Yeah.
And then to take that into, okay, now I want to go public with it. How did the public respond? I mean, I know Hollywood may have had their own response, but folks who are listening, for example, how would they show support, or what was that like for you going public? Because I honestly, Terry, I'm so sorry, but I have not followed your career minute by minute. And so, I don't know how it went.
Oh, check this out. This is crazy.
All
It's a
right.
wonderful story. I was, again, in the middle of a giant Old Spice campaign, as their representative, and I was on a TV show, and I was doing movies. It was really big. Uh, I'll never forget, because this was the early days of Facebook Live,
Yeah.
when you could get on the internet live. And I went, wow, I said, if I'm going to really do this, this is my own channel. It was the first day, and Facebook gave me the app early, like to say, oh yeah, use this and go out. Because now Instagram lives and all these live TikToks and all that, but this is in the early days of social media. Okay. I mean, you just come out of, what is the other one? It's just, well, anyway,
Yeah.
it's so like, wow, I could really hit everybody at the same time.
And
And,
control your story.
right. And I never forget, I was literally I just left the gym. I was sitting in my car, and I went, now, do it now. And let me tell you, if I had hesitated, I probably wouldn't have done it. But I just said now. And the world shook. When I say shook, every major television news show, morning show wanted me on the next day. They were like, Terry Crews admits to pornography addiction. No one had ever talked about this stuff publicly. It was front page news. It was a big deal. Old Spice called my agent, like, we got to let him go.
Oh.
And I went, and I said, I understand. I said, you didn't sign up for this. I totally get it. You didn't sign me to be, this kind of spokesperson, and I totally understand. But I said, I had to do this. I said, this is just a reality for me. And I was ready to take those consequences. And then 2 days later, they said, wait a minute. He didn't get caught in anything. He's basically just told the story that he told what happened to him. And he's telling, it's different if somebody puts you on blast. You got caught in some, crazy position. But I was like, yo, the reason I did it was to help anybody else who was in the same position I was. And they went, hold on. No, 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 no. And I got letters and support from the people at Procter and Gamble, and they were like, yo, we're with you, man. We're with you. Oh my God. I'm just choked up thinking about it,
So you got to do the commercials.
Oh yeah, and I continued.
That's amazing.
Isn't that wild? Because no one knew what to do. It was like, oh, I think we got to get rid of them. Do we? It was too. But my God, it was such. And then the comments. People were like, me, man. Whoa, me. That's me.
Yeah.
Oh man, I mean, thousands upon thousands, hundreds of thousands of comments are like, Terry, I had this problem for years. People came confessing. People came to me like, what do I do? Help me. I'm like, I don't know. I'm not a licensed therapist. I'm like, I don't, but it was a flood worldwide, mind you. People
Good.
took the video and put it in different languages. It was in Russian. It was in Portuguese. It was the, it was like, oh, and now, mind you, it made me feel, I was like, oh my God, like this is one of the reasons why, you know, I felt this unction, but you feel the purpose and mission that
Mhm.
came with it. Like, and it was a stab at this thing, this monster.
Did you expect Dirty Little Secret to be a
I love
multi?
this,
Oh, it's
Terry.
beautiful.
Thank
Wait, it's
you.
Amazing.
emotional. They're waiting. And
I've got
hang
chills
on,
over
hang on.
here.
Say,
Hang
sorry,
I've
on.
sorry.
got
Yeah.
chills.
Go
Terry,
ahead.
thank you. Because people were hearing you.
Yeah.
They were hearing you. They were feeling you. And what a beautiful, because then you have purpose and mission, like you were talking about. You were connecting with these people in your beautiful moment of conscious, thoughtful vulnerability.
Uh,
Thank you for that.
no,
What
um,
did that stab to the monster mean to you?
it was felt great. And knowing that this thing, it was just like, man, like again, when I say I got angry at what, and this is where I want I really want to sum up a little bit of what I'm saying right now because people get a bad image of the term recovery. It term is always looked at as like, oh, you'll never beat this. You're in recovery. Oh, poor guy. Yet another way to feel sorry for yourself. But you got to understand recovery, the definition of recovery is to get something back. It's like someone ran off with your life and your treasure and your everything that was good in your life, and you're getting it back. You are recovering this stuff. It's good news. It's great. Like to be in recovery is a oh my God, like man, and every day I get more stuff back. You're like, you thought these things were gone, and you're like, oh man, I got this back. What? I thought it was over. You know what I mean? It's just like that's the term. That's what recovery is. It's not poor guy. Oh, he's never going to get over it. No, no. In fact, you're turning into more of yourself. There's part of you that was stolen. You're actually getting all of you back. And you're endless. Like you are, and you keep going. And it's every day I get to more like, oh, instead of being that image of Terry Crews, now I'm the real Terry Crews. You know what I mean? Now,
Yeah.
woo, like this is a man. Now I can go in strength and power, and full force. That's what recovery is. So
Terry, you're a therapist's dream.
oh man, I've been through it all for a reason, though. For a reason, I feel so honored and blessed to be able to talk to you guys, to be here, and you know, and again, I do understand that people feel like, oh man, this can't be me. Listen, then I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the people who had those problems, the problem that I did.
And so
There's a lot of people who don't have it.
if Joe is out there and he's listening to this and what you're talking about resonates with him, what would you tell Joe to go do so he can start the journey of finding the real Joe?
First of all, I would tell Joe to be honest with himself. Stop the pity, first and foremost, because that's the thing that holds you in you can always, this is the thing that, you know, the pity fuels the shame that fuels the pity. And one thing I would say is you have more power than you realize, because that's the thing about self-pity. You feel powerless. It's just poor me. And that's a very male trait. I have to be honest with you. It's kind of, a lot of guys can feel, being feeling self-pity feels like, you're being strong. It's a, I had to start looking at an emotion wheel, like,
Mm.
because what I discovered is, once I started defining how I was feeling, because I only had two emotions. I was happy or angry, and there's a whole lot of those things. Um, but the self-pity has to go. Then find yourself some help. Literally. Once the moment you pick up the phone or go into a therapist's office, it's like you have to the pity goes to the side, because you're doing something about your situation. Because all self-pity is about complaining, but once you start to actively move toward your healing, you have to leave. The self-pity kind of goes away, and you're like, you can deal. So that's what I would tell Joe, just to really, really find the resources and find a person that you can really, really get you past and into a full recovery from this addiction.
And so, Joe, if you're listening out there, you're looking for those resources, you can go to itap.com. You can find a therapist, a certified sex addiction therapist who can help you with that. You can look into the various 12-step programs for sex addiction, S-Anon, SAA, or Sex Addicts Anonymous, Sex and Love Addicts Anonymous. There's some others out there. And you can find a place where you can go get some help. Terry, brother, thank you so
Oh,
much.
it's good news, man. This is great news. It's just, I get joy at telling the story. I get joy every day, um, because, you know, as much as we talk, there's somebody getting free as we speak.
I'm thinking because Jeannie and I are just publishing a workbook right now, and in our introduction, one of the things we talked about is how people will often say, "Oh, you do work in sex addiction, betrayal trauma, that must be heavy, painful, difficult work." And we will say, "Yeah, it is, but it's also really full of hope and joy and the overcoming of all of these obstacles." And you can't paint those pictures of redemption without the dark patches to start with.
So good. That's it. Redemption. I love that. So good.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks,
Thank
Terry.
you.
Tim, do you want to do the final?
Yeah, so thank you everyone for joining us in our conversation today. So glad that you are here. And if you liked this episode, and quite honestly, even if you didn't, please go and rate us well on whatever platform you're listening to. And if you've got questions you would like us to answer in a mailbag episode, you can send those to us at conversations.sar@gmail.com. Thank you everyone for joining us today in this conversation.
Bye-bye.
Scary.
Thanks, Terry.
Thank you.